Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How are you, man?
It's a little bittersweet here, brother.
It is bittersweet. It is.
Yeah. So after 200 and God knows how many shows, I don't even know myself.
200.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. We are wrapping the old Amps and Axes, coming to a close here, and we're gonna try to retool and come out with something, but we're gonna be taking a little bit of time off.
Yes.
To kind of figure out where we're going to go, how this is all going to flow. And what I will do, though, is I guess, like once a week, something like that, I will definitely give like an update either on the social media or just do a little couple-minute segment, where I throw it out. And and in that way, we can...
we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch with the people that want to stay in touch. And then when we come back, hopefully... we're going to be able to touch more of a wider audience, and that will bring in, of course, more people, which then can help us propel this down the road a little bit easier.
Right. It takes a lot more people to make this take the next step.
Yes.
So we're going to drop back and re-look at this, re-examine things, and just find out. We love the fan base that we have.
Yes.
But it's simply not large enough.
Yeah, and for you guys that have been here since, the very first episodes and all, we can't thank you enough.
Right.
And like I said, we're going to try to come up with a different version that is going to, not just guitarists. We understand that guitarists are a majority of it, but there's many avenues here, and we kind of...
In music, yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of... maybe cut our own nose off a little bit, kind of narrowing that niche where if we would have made it wider, there'll be some people that maybe are some things that you may not dig that week, but it's not going to be that, I guess, I don't know, it may enlighten you with something new, and that's hopefully what we're going to do,
Right. And, I've seen a couple of people over the past week or two after we've taken this decision, and I've mentioned to them that, they say, oh, man, I really love the show. And I mentioned to them that, we're putting it to bed. It's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. And they were sad. And, so are we. And we appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. But this has not been an easy decision by any means.
We would not only like to move onward, we would like to move upward.
Yeah.
So, and Mick, you put so much time into this. This is your baby, man. And
hey, look, you've been a part of this thing since day one, and that's the thing, is we make a great team when it comes to this show, and it's just. Look, we had no idea, and guess what? There was really no podcast out there doing what we do.
Right.
And, many have sprouted up, and many have gone away since we started. So we've been here for a good bit of time. And,
True.
And, it's one of these things that we took a swing. It was a brand new format, and now we're able to realize that, hey, you know what? We were kind of limiting a little bit. And now we got to just figure out how we're going to, bigger arms. We got to hug everybody.
Like I said, onward and upward.
Yes.
And, if who knows, if we can't figure it out, maybe Mick and I will just come back and argue. That seems to work on so many formats. We'll just argue. Yeah, you want that? Let us know.
Just perpetual screaming.
That's it. You scream, I scream, we all scream, and then we'll scream again.
Exactly.
So all right.
anyway,
Well, anyway, we'd like to thank you for everybody that stuck around this long. And we're not going away. We're just taking a break.
That's right.
So but we're going to take a break on a high note of we really enjoyed this guest.
Yeah.
And we kept him for last because like I said, we want to go out on a high note. So thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. And right now we're going to take a pause for the cause and come back with our guest of the week. Somebody that's been actually playing guitar since he was probably earlier than 12, but by 12 years old, he was actually being recognized by major talent, major artists. And this is a really cool story, and it's a really cool guest.
Yeah.
And enjoy this one last time. So we're going to take a break, pause for the cause, come back with our guest of the week. Guitarist, blues guitarist for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
Blues guitarist extraordinaire, Mr. Erik Steckel. All right, and we are back with our guest of the week because we always come back with a guest of the week, and this week is no exception. We have the I'm just going to say guitar player extraordinaire. I just love the way he plays, and he's keeping the torch. So here we are, our guest of the week, Mr. Erik Steckel. Erik, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you guys for having me. It's actually my birthday today. So
look at that.
Dude, happy birthday. And thanks for taking us, taking time for us on your day.
Oh, sure. It's 28. It's not a big one. It's not like 30 or 21. So it's just another day for me. I'm not, it's still fun.
I don't remember what any of those birthdays are like, and only 28. Damn.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I know,
I'll leave it there.
It's kind of crazy because, I've been doing this for 20 years now. Because my first gig, my first paying gig was $100, and I was 8.
8?
So, yeah. So, and it's unbelievable. So, because I don't feel old at all, but when I look back, I'm like, damn, that was 20 years ago.
What the hell is wrong with me?
8 years old, going out and playing guitar and making $100, man. I think I had the world in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I
right?
didn't even in those days. Honestly, I didn't even know. I felt like I thought I was like 30 years old in my head. So everybody's looking at me like there's this little kid up there with a full size guitar. Everybody's looking at me like this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, and I'm looking back at them like, why is this so crazy? Just because of my
he reminds me of another guy that we all know started way back and was on stage with big people, and that was one of a little bit of the, I don't want to say influence, but similarity that I heard when I was listening.
Little bit.
You know what? We're gonna find out where that pre-8-year-old came from, and we're gonna jump in the time machine here, in the Wayback Machine, and find out where Mr. Erik Steckel was born and raised, and man, how did it happen?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So that's like it's like a suburb of Philly, basically. You're in, you're in just that Lehigh Valley area. And the thing about that area, which was interesting, is there just happened to be, lucky for me, it was kind of the place where guys who worked in New York City liked to live because it was an hour away and you were out of the city. So I got to know a lot of pretty, high class guitarists. I knew Sheryl Crow's guitarist, a guy named Todd Wolfe, and there was a bunch of other guys in this area that just kind of took me under their wing, just out of sheer luck. So when I was coming up, 7, 8, 9 years old, I had, real serious players to look up to, not just weekend warrior guys or something, So
now was it knowing those players that got you into guitar, or was your family musical? I always ask this because, you never know where somebody got their influence from.
Well, it's actually funny because my family are about as, if you meet my folks, you go, I look nothing like my dad has a corporate job. My mom was a school teacher. Like there's no rock and roll, my parents are not like rock and roll kind of people. I'm like the first guy with long hair ever in the Steckel family, I think. It's mostly, doctors and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. But it was cool because my parents are just music lovers, and they would always I grew up with Van Halen records, Stevie Ray Vaughan records, Allman Brothers records. So, I'm like 1 year, 2 year old kid, and I'm hearing that. I'm not hearing Disney music. I'm hearing like real rock and roll. Nice. So it was already being pumped into my head before I could even, speak. So as far as playing a guitar, though, that was my Uncle Dave. I had this very eccentric uncle. He lived up in Vermont, and he was a guitarist, just a novice. He didn't do it professionally. When I was 7 years old, he said to my dad, he says, look, let's just go halves on getting the kid a Strat. Let's just do it and see what happens. So him and my dad bought me some like Squire, some piece of junk, whatever, just a starter for a kid. And 2 years later, I'm like playing bars. So it just happened really quickly. Yeah. And I don't really remember. It was kind of a blur, to be honest. Well,
I got to ask, how old are your parents right now?
They were both 57.
Okay, so they're 6 years older than me, and that's so yeah. Your parents are in that age group where it would have been the Van Halen stuff and the Allman Brothers and all that. I mean, it would have been that could have went horribly wrong, right? They could have been like Rick James fans.
Well, that's the thing. I got lucky, man, because I mean, my only knowledge of good taste came from my upbringing in the house. I mean, I remember. Like, it was mostly, like, Texas Flood. Like, that album was the one that my dad played. So that album is almost like, it's like tattooed on me. You know what I mean? It's just, I know that record like the back of my hand. And it's one of those things, like, when I'm on stage, even to this day, I go back to those licks, that stuff, because that's just what's in my DNA.
And so that's not a bust on Rick James. I'm just saying.
No. It could like I was saying, what's wrong with Rick James?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Rick James, but it could have been heavily disco influenced. You know what I mean? It could have been. Absolutely. It could have been something like Leif Garrett inside the house. You just don't know what you would have gotten at that time, because the 70s, people were out of their minds.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of diverse music.
Oh, yeah.
And, whether you liked some of it or didn't like some of it, the great thing is there was a lot of diverse music.
Yeah, and I have to say, whether if it was disco, like Casey and the Sunshine Band, or like Earth, Wind and Fire, or, any of those bands, they were musicians.
Absolutely.
There wasn't some guy that was, running a computer. There was none of that. Right. I mean, they were real musicians, and that even, I listen to that stuff and I go, man, that horn section is kicking. Yeah. It's not a guitar fest,
Right.
But it definitely is musicians.
And this always surprises people when I do interviews, but when I'm in my car or in my downtime or any free time, I am not listening to music that is like what I do. So I don't listen to blues, rock, guitar-driven music. And the reason for that is because it would be just too much of the same thing. And it would also stifle me. There'd be no growth. So I listen to stuff completely different than when I listen. I listen to Porcupine Tree, which is like a English progressive band. I listen to King Crimson.
Wow.
I even listen to German techno music. I mean, I do not listen to anything that sounds like what I do. And the idea behind that is to say, okay, if I want my music to be more colorful and have more influences, I got to get out of the box. I can't only listen to Stevie and Hendrix and Clapton and the stuff that I sound like, because it's just too much of the same.
Well, it's too much. It's cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Exactly.
And after a while, you're like, I don't want any more cake.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you, when you started playing so young, who were you playing with when you were playing bars?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. It was adults. And basically what happened in those days was, like, my parents would approach the local sort of the veteran musicians in the town and say, look, I'll be the one paying you, but Erik's your musical boss. Because my dad didn't know anything about the technicality of musicianship and all that, and chord changes and all that stuff. But he was running the thing as a business. Mm-hmm. But the guy, I had 60-year-old guys answering to a 9-year-old kid musically.
Wow.
So yeah, and there's video. I mean, if you really get deep into YouTube, there's some clips out there from those days. Of course, it was before cell phones, so there's not that much. But But yeah, I mean, I never had like a kid band. And the reason was because my music in those days was entirely blues. So, you know, you're not going to find another
You'd
two
be
other
hard-pressed.
that know how to play a blues shuffle.
You'd have to go to Kenny Wayne Shepherdstown.
Right.
You know?
You'd have to round them. You have to go like on a countrywide search to find the other two guys.
Dweezil, Zappa, you know, Kenny Wayne. You'd have to you'd have to take the bus around a while to get those other 8-year-olds.
But I mean, how fortunate that you actually had these people agree to play with you, because man, if you're gonna feel what it feels like and develop as a blues player, who better to play with?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bunch of seasoned musicians.
Oh man, what a blessing.
And it was cool because the reason why they agreed to it was because musically there was a respect, because they said, okay, this kid this isn't a novelty act. He's not up here playing to a track on the PA. Like, it's not phony. Like, this kid is real, you know? And that's why they said, okay, I'll do it. You know, they weren't embarrassed to be up there with me because I wasn't just like a phony sort of gimmick. And that's why, you know, and it's funny because, you know, when you get older, of course, you don't want to be older. You want to go back to when you're younger. But when I was a kid, I hated being so limited by my age, because I wanted the older guys to respect me. I hated being a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old because I felt that, these guys are just going to see me as, you know, some little kid. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're almost 30 and you go, why was I in such a rush to go up? I don't know. But yeah. But basically, yeah, I never wanted to be a novelty actor or like a gimmick, you know.
Now, were you playing and you know, you gave it a little knock, but we have said many, many times the guitars that were available at that time were so much better than what was available, you know, 20, 30 years ago. Sure. So you had a little Squier Strat. Were you playing with that Squier Strat, or did you get something different? And what was the rest of your rig like at that point? What were you
it's funny. In those days, and at the time, because my parents weren't musicians, we were all learning about gear at the same time. Wow. So like, because it's not like a lot of kids who play guitar that young, their dad maybe is a famous guitarist, so their dad goes out and buys them the best rig and gets them set up. I was figuring out gear as I was growing as a player, and my dad's kind of figuring it out with me, and of course helping me out, you know, with his wallet, of course, because I'm a kid. But so we didn't really know. It was a learning curve. So like in those days, you know, eventually I got an American Strat instead of the Squier, and I think in those days I was playing through like a super reverb with a tube screamer, so like a very Stevie Ray kind of rig.
Nice, yeah.
Which is about the opposite, which is very far from what I sound like now. But it was because I didn't know. I had a sound in my head, which is the sound I have now. I always had that sort of high gain rock sound in my head, but I didn't know. And also, what 10-year-old kid can afford a $4,000 diesel amp too? So it's kind of, you know, at a certain point it's also ridiculous to expect that, you know. So it was just kind of a learning curve, and it still is, to be honest. I mean,
it always is.
You're never done. Yeah.
Well, that's really. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a super and a tube screamer. I mean, that is, you know, I mean, that's one of the great sounds that there is, that you graduated all the way up to like a diesel. There aren't, and I do know one who's a personal friend of mine who can pull off very blues based stuff with a diesel. I am not one of those people. I don't know how you guys do it. It doesn't work for me, but the guys that can do it and pull it off, it's like, good on you. You know, there must be something in the fingers that you guys have. I don't. I can't get believable blues.
Sure.
I mean, but that's a whole nother thing. That's me, and that's not you.
And the gain's on one, Jeff. I mean,
well, that might be it.
Well, what's funny is I always joke around people. I say, like, you know, you watch a Steel Panther, you watch like a Satchel interview, and he jokingly says, "Okay, kids, whatever the gain channel is on your amp, turn everything up to 10, turn the gain up to 10." But I actually literally do that in my actual career.
What?
That is my approach. Yeah, like I'm on it. My sound that I've been in this for years my setting, and it's on my albums, my live gigs, my setting is Diesel Herbert channel 3 gain on 10.
Holy
literally.
You're kidding me.
But the reason why it doesn't always sound like a big mess is because I am working that volume knob on my guitar constantly. That's my foot switch. That's my pedal, is that volume knob.
I've seen that on your videos where you get into. I saw one video where it's just you up there doing a guitar solo at some show.
Right.
And it says guitar meltdown. And you're getting like crazy, like Slipknot heavy tones. Then you go into this whole, Eric Johnson type sound, and then it rolls off, and it gets. And I saw you're working the knob. You're working the volume.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm blown away by
all just that.
Yeah, I'm blown away by the sheer change there. Mm-hmm. That's incredible, man. Jeff, that doesn't even sound right, does it? That defies how it works.
Right. No, it's just the guitar cable and a really good amp, and then I basically just use. It's just a combination of using a lot of right hand sort of different textures.
Wow.
Like that's the thing about tone. The note has to have texture. And what I notice is guitar players that have bad tone, it's not always gear related. Sometimes it's just that they're not putting any texture into the note, so every note just sounds kind of flat and boring.
Makes sense.
A big trick that I tell people, because when I don't have much time to teach people, but whenever I do, I say, man, try to put some weight, some texture into every single note. Like even up on the high E string or the high B string, just put in that. Do maybe a rake into the note, or turn your pick on the side and get a harmonic, kind of like a Billy Gibbons thing, because that's how you're going to get those textures out of your amp.
Wow.
And a lot of guys are they're chasing that with effects pedals or all these different things. And over the years, I've just eliminated anything in between my guitar and my amp. And
badass.
Nick, you were saying that's not how it works. Turn the gain to 10 and everything. But what that does tell you is it's a quality amp, and somebody put time into that, the amp having that ability to be controlled so well from the guitar.
And I've seen videos too where you're using a Bogner. Right?
Yes, I technically endorse both companies, which I know sounds like a little bit of like a catch-22, but what it is I'm friends with Reinhold on a personal level. I've known him for years, just from the LA scene, and he's just a great dude. And so I use his products, and I also know Peter Diesel, and I'm friends with him, and so it's I don't really like, the only company I'm actually really endorsed with on paper is Nags, because I have a signature guitar with them that we sell. But with amps, I basically just say, hey, I'm friends with both of these guys. They're both mad scientists, brilliant, guys, and I support them both. In fact, today I'm getting the new Bogner Eclipse amp is coming here, which is an amp that I kind of was involved in a little bit with Reinhold. It was me and a few other players were involved in like voicing it. And again, it's one of those things where it's just extremely high gain.
That's blowing my mind.
Fire breather. Yeah, it's just totally insane. But, like I said, for some reason, I'm able to wrangle that in and control that gain. And some players aren't. Some players with too much gain, it's just all feedback and all noise. For some reason, the way my hands operate, I'm able to just control that, and it doesn't get messy,
And Jeff, both of those guys personally, right?
I don't know Peter.
Oh, you don't know Peter. Peter's actually a fan of our show.
Oh, cool.
Very nice. Very nice. I do know Reinhold. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We go back many crazy NAMM shows.
And now, the thing is, Eric, I don't know if you even know this or not, but we're in Maryland, Jeff and I.
I saw that just when I called on the Skype thing. I didn't know where you guys were located.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and right now, I'm actually in Jersey calling you right now.
Oh, so that's why the signal's so good. But Jeff is also an amp builder. Did Buddha amps back in the day, and now does East amplification. And that's how. So the whole thing ties because Jeff knows Reinhold, and then of course he knows Joe Nags, and then. By me knowing Jeff, You know,
Right.
it's the great thing.
I probably know Peter a little bit better than Joe, but you know,
Sure.
I know the guys. They're on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, exactly. I'm actually going there tomorrow. I'm gonna be down there tomorrow because they are giving me. So they made the prototype, the guitar that you see in all the videos. It was the prototype Kanai TS, which stands for Kanai Thick / Steckel. So,
cool.
So because basically what the Kanai has been part of their lineup. It's sort of their answer to the single cut Les Paul. It's been in their lineup for years.
Yeah.
But then when Peter approached me about doing a signature model, he said, "Well, what of our lineup do you like already?" And I said, "Well, I love the Kanai," but I said, "Peter, I said, no offense, but why it's so thin? Like not sounding, but it's a thin guitar, like physically thin." And I was like, "Man, I want this thing to be like a beast. I want this thing to be like the fattest old Les Paul, And he said, "Well, we made the SSC for Steve Stevens, which is a thick guitar, but I'm not crazy about the SSC shape. I like the Kanai shape, but I wanted the thickness of the SSC, if you feel me." So we basically just combined all these elements into one guitar that they didn't have in their lineup yet, and then it became my model. And so the guitar that I'm playing, the sort of sunflower one, that's the prototype.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow I go and pick up, they're making me a Black Beauty, so I go pick that up tomorrow.
Well, I tell you, man, that roster that they have is exceptional people because you got Steve Stevens, you got Doug Rappaport, and Erik. I mean, that's three-headed fire-breathing dragon right there, man.
It's so cool, man, because like I've been a fan of Doug's for years, and I've been just friends with him. Yeah. And I was playing Tom Anderson's for so many years, and like I said, I still am friends with Tom and Roy, and those guys are great. I still own my Tom Andersons. But what happened was I saw Doug, going headfirst into this Nags thing, and then he had his own signature model with Nags. And I'm there as a Tom Anderson guy thinking, like, kind of almost shrugging it off like, it's just another shooting star guitar company, another flash in the pan, whatever. And then I was home in LA, and a buddy of mine named Tony Martinez, who's a Spanish guy, and he's a guitar player over there and plays with some big acts over there. He just wanted to stop over to the house and meet me. And I said, "Yeah, man, bring your guitars, we'll jam." And he brings his Kanai, and he hands it to me. And I looked at him, and I was like, "I got to get a Nags. This thing is incredible." So my first Nags, which was a Severn, that I bought like 2 years ago, I didn't know Peter or Joe, and they probably didn't really know me. So I bought it as just a regular guy, just bought it. And 2 days after I bought it, I put up a video on Facebook, and somebody sent it to Peter, and within hours he said, "You want to be on our roster?" And
wow.
Nice.
Yeah, it was that cool.
Nice. Yeah. Now I gotta ask, because you started on your Strat. You did mention Tom Anderson's, which were Strat-ish,
right?
Influence. Let's put it that way. Why? At what point did you want to go to a bigger body, and why? Had you gravitated to Les Pauls at some point, or?
Yeah, it was basically because when I was, this would have been 2013, so I was about 23. I was doing a tour of Europe, and long story short, there was a record company over there that was sort of interested in working with me. It was Universal Netherlands, and the guy who ran the company was a collector of bursts, 58 through 60 Les Pauls. And I was at that point. I was never a Les Paul. I was always a Strat guy. So single cut guitars were just not in my wheelhouse. But he said, Erik, I'm going to give you my '59 original burst for the tour, and he used on the tour. Yeah, right. He gave me a $200,000 guitar. Yeah. And there's video. It's amazing. There's videos out there, and
my
and
God.
I was playing through a Bogner on that tour. So. And the first couple nights, I played it for a couple songs as a novelty, and then went back to the Tom Andersons. And then by the end of the tour, I became just obsessed with this guitar because it had a certain kind of mid-range quality about it that the Strats are never going to have. So I've been kind of almost like chasing that dragon ever since. And I was never able to find it in like a reissue Les Paul, and I wasn't going to spend $18,000 on some kind of custom shop overpriced Les Paul or whatever. So when I started working with Nags and realized how amazing their build quality is, I was like, this is my chance to get that 59 in my own, modern guitar. and we nailed it. I mean, the neck feels just like it. The thing sustains like it. It sounds like it.
Wow.
So I think, like I said, I tell people, look, if you want a $300,000 burst, but for $5,000, I know where to send you. I really
nice.
Do. I know it's a big statement, but I mean, I've played both. So
what pickups? Anything different? Anything custom?
So my prototype has bare knuckle mules, which are basically the industry standard for a PAF. I mean, that's like the PAF. Now, we are Seymour Duncan had contacted us and said, we want to throw our hat in the ring with this Erik Steckel guitar. We want to make a pickup that we feel either outperforms the mule, or at the very least sounds just like the mule, but we can mass produce it for you in quantities that are easier for you to work with. So the guitar that I'm picking up tomorrow is going to have these Duncans in it. So I'm going to be trying it out tomorrow, and if I like them, then we go that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, a good 59, those pickups aren't hot. There's so, and they have such a beautiful top end, and they're so articulate. It's like,
it's actually, just because of now we have all the science behind it, the magnets are actually weaker than they were when they were new.
Right.
That thing that takes place over all those years does that awesome top end thing.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing, and like I said, for my model, we wanted to. We didn't want to go with a hot pickup because I'm playing through amps with crazy gains. So it's like, if we were going to put some kind of EMG in this thing, it would be a huge mess, So
the Steve Vai Evolution pickup.
Exactly. It would just be like, it would be just all mud. So, and I told Peter, I said, Peter, anyone who's in the market anyone who follows me and is in the market to buy a guitar with my name on it is probably playing through a high gain amp anyways. So that's why we decided to go with an authentic PAF in this guitar, because we want to have the clarity and the articulation,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Man. That's awesome. Now you mentioned L.A. and the word home in the same statement.
Right.
When did you leave Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Oh well. Okay. I've moved around my whole life. I was Pennsylvania. I was born and raised here. I say here because I'm in Jersey now, so I'm close. Born and raised here till I was 14. Then I went down to Florida. I went to high school in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, and that's how I got hooked up with Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi and all that whole scene, because they live in Jacksonville. And that's how, because Dwayne Trucks, who's Derek's brother, was my drummer for like 5 years.
Wow.
I was living down in Florida. So I would have been about 16, 17, something like that. And Dwayne would have been 19. And so that's how I got hooked up with the Trucks family and got to know them. And I got a little more into the Southern rock scene. So then I graduated college. I don't know how I did that. I somehow graduated from college and moved to Nashville. So then I lived in Nashville for about 2.5 years. And then broke up with this girl. Long story short, ended up in my car driving on I-40 to California, saying, let's just LA or bust, basically. And first couple of years out there, I just crashed with people and did the whole sort of starving artist thing. And then for the last couple of years, I've been just renting this little house up in Laurel Canyon and loving it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I imagine you were playing with different people, in Florida and in Nashville, local
Correct.
Guys.
Yeah, and I always had bands because Europe has been a huge part of my career. I've been touring Europe since the early days with John Mayall, because John was the one who gave me my start into the business. Like up until John. See, basically from the ages of like 9 through about 12, I was like a local hit in the Philadelphia area. I was a local, I was on all the news stations. I was the local little kid, the kid out there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got this offer to play a gig in Florida, and I was about 12, and it was a festival in Sarasota, and John was the headliner. But lucky for me, John pulled his tour bus in while I was playing my opening set. And this is how the story goes. Now, I'm hearing this, secondhand because I was on stage at the time, but this is the story that I was told. John said to his guys, I'm going to go walk around and listen to this guy who's playing right now, because he couldn't see who was up there. He heard a guitarist. He comes around the side of the stage, and there's this little 4-foot tall kid up there. And he goes, what the fuck is... He couldn't believe it. He's like, what is this? So he says to the promoter, where's this kid's dad? I got to talk to this kid's dad. And my dad was backstage. So while I'm playing, John is talking to my father, and John says to my father, I want your permission to take your son on tour in Europe with me.
Get out of
Wow.
My dad grew up with John Mayall's records. So my dad he's just like almost in tears. He's like, this is unbelievable.
He's shitting his pants like, I'm meeting John Mayall, and he's going to take my son to Europe.
Right. So, and my dad then, I remember after the gig back in the hotel, my dad said, now listen, Eric, don't, entertainers are flaky. Don't get your hopes up. He might not follow through on this. Well, let me tell you something. A week after that gig, there was an itinerary in our inbox.
Wow.
And it was plane tickets, and it was the real deal. So I'm 12 years old, and I'm riding around in Sweden on a tour bus with freaking John Mayall.
Wow.
And I'm like,
that is the greatest story ever.
and it's just, and I'm just like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm a 12-year-old kid, and I'm just loving this. I'm just like, this is unbelievable.
Wow.
And so I went from playing sports bars to playing in front of 7,000 people at, theaters with John Mayall. So I owe him.
Jesus.
He's the only reason why I'm actually out there really as a professional to this day, really doing it and touring because of him.
So, and it's safe to say this because we know the story. John Mayall is your BB King to Joe Bonamassa. I mean,
that is correct. Yeah, he was the guy who basically said, I'm taking this kid and I'm putting him out there and I want the world to hear this guy.
That is so cool.
And John, has a heart of gold because John went well above the call. First of all, he didn't have to do that. And then what happened was Reuters News, which is like an international sort of news network.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They did this story on me when I was about 14. And they called John. This was 2 years after the tour was already over. And they called John and said, John, can you drive into our London office and sit here and come on camera and tell us about this kid? And John not only said, yeah, I'll do it, but he went in there and just said all this glowing stuff about me and said, basically, I hired Clapton when he was 17 and I hired Steckel when he was 12, and they're both great and all this. And I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Hell.
I saw the footage later and I was just stunned.
You were getting put in the same sentence with Eric Clapton.
With Clapton, right.
Right. And nobody, and like I said, we didn't pay him to say it. Was just totally organic. It was just, he just drove in his own car and went in there and did this interview. And, a few months later, we saw the whole finished product and we see John sitting there with a microphone on his vest talking about me. And we couldn't believe it.
That is mind blowing, man. I mean,
it's staggering. Wow.
You are, you're walking with elites.
A little bit.
And to be honest with you, I didn't really even comprehend it until really recently, because it's so over the top.
And at that age, I mean, you're figuring out why your voice is changing and what's growing on your lip called hair.
Exactly. I'm figuring out how to shave and not break out. And then I'm here and I got John Mayall saying, like, talking about when he hired Clapton in 1965. It's just unbelievable, So it really, until I was in my 20s, I didn't have the I didn't really understand, like, really how insane those years were.
And the good part is that you've kept it together, because to have that kind of thing happen at that young age, your parents obviously did a great thing, because, you could have burned out and this could not even be a conversation.
Not only burned out, but maybe your head wouldn't fit through the doorway.
Exactly.
Wow.
I mean,
I think the reason why that didn't happen was because my family became friends with a lot of the other, and I'm not going to mention names. I don't want to trash anybody, but we became friends with a lot of the other blues prodigies that were out on the scene in the 90s and the early 2000s. and we saw how they were being managed or mismanaged or taken advantage of by people.
Gotcha.
And we saw what it was like on the other side of the aisle, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, as a family, said we're just going to work hard to make sure we don't become those families. Because we saw kids that moved to LA when they were like 11, and their parents threw them out there with some chaperone, and next thing you know, the kid's guardian is taking their gig money and spending it on coke or something. We saw what happened to some of these guitar prodigies where they just ended up working at Guitar Center or in prison or something. So we just basically said we're just going to really try to keep things.
Well, that's very cool, and your parents were thinking well ahead for that kind of thing.
Good on your parents. Man.
Yeah, man, because it is a look, it's a cutthroat business.
Oh, it's brutal.
And especially today.
It's gotten very bizarre. That's the only word I can use to describe the music business right now. It's just bizarre, because you got like everybody's out there, and there's no account. What's the word? There's no threshold anymore for what's good, or like anybody can just be out there selling their music and shoving their music down your throat.
Sure.
Back in the 80s, if you weren't really any good, you probably wouldn't make it past the club scene, or there was always those sort of the pecking order, I guess, of things. But now everybody's out there. So the fans are almost like oversaturated on a daily basis with people trying to sell and promote themselves and their art. So it's very hard to get out there and hustle, but not also be kind of a whore about it,
Oh, yeah. Well, we've been to NAMM, and it's like, these guys are bivouacking right outside the door playing their music, and it's like, dude, what are you doing?
Right.
And we see a lot of the guys that get up and do the demo stuff. Well, I don't even know if they're demo guys, right? Jeff, didn't we saw guys that would get up and just a billion notes, thinking that somebody was going to come along and snatch them,
see them, right?
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, that's
they weren't demo guys; they were guys in booths demoing gear.
Yeah.
Well, they were more like want somebody to hear them, but they were demoing gear for themselves.
Right, exactly.
For themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
So
NAMM's a funny thing, because NAMM, I always. I'm very reluctant about NAMM, and I only go when I'm hired to do things there. And the reason for that, and it's not like an antisocial thing, or not like, I don't want to be around my fellow musicians, because the hangs are great. But the thing about it is, I know since I'm a guitarist, I know how we think. And I'm thinking like, okay, a room full of guys like me, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really sound like a fun afternoon, So I'm always kind of like, for me at NAMM, I love being home during NAMM and just having people just come over to the house and hang and go out to the bars. And it's just for me a chance to see people that I haven't seen all year.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of home, we'll get back to LA. You said it's been a couple of years, kind of recent.
Yep.
What's you just jumped in the car and went. So what's going on in LA for you? How has it been?
Nothing. It's not. It's funny when it's because everybody goes to LA for some sort of career thing, and that's not why I went there. Because honestly, if I have a Wi-Fi connection, I've got a career. Like I can run my business from Mars if there's an internet connection. Like I don't really, because I'm not a regional player. I don't. I'm always in Europe or Australia or touring this country, so I'm never like focused in just one region.
Gotcha.
So I'm not really an LA player, because there's guys out there who are amazing, but they're LA players. They just play the Baked Potato and the Sugar Mill and all those venues all the time. Mm-hmm. And I really don't think I'm one of those guys. I went out there because I love the weather out there. I think it's beautiful out there, and I just love just the vibe of the way it feels out there. And I guess, a part of me pretends that Laurel Canyon is still cool, like it was in the old days. Because it's not, I mean, it isn't. Like, it's the place I live is a little old 1930s little bungalow thing, but all the other houses on the street are these big McMansions that they built in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, I grew up reading all the stuff about Laurel Canyon and Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, and
Right.
now it's just Mercedes and Porsches everywhere, and it's just yuppie, So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's we'll see what happens. I might not stay there forever, but.
It takes all of the history and mystique out of it, know. And, but I mean, if you like where you are and you're comfortable where you are, you make it what you want, and it is what it is for you. It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, like I said, when I'm there, which I'm not home much because I'm always touring. I spend up to let me think about this. I can spend up to 6 months of the year just in Europe. That's how much I tour Europe. Because guitar-based music, they just eat it up over there.
That's the thing that we always talk about, Eric, and
always comes up,
and it really it irritates me because it's like, really bands that are out there that are really, really good. You go, well, when are they going to tour America? And they're like, nah, we're in Europe, man. We're in Europe. Right. We're in Australia. We're not. America
where
doesn't.
The audience is.
Yeah, America doesn't like us, and it's like, what?
And the money. I mean, because it's like we all got to eat, and the thing is, I mean, it's weird because being an American citizen and loving this country, I want it's not, and I have to answer this on Facebook a lot. Sometimes people even get a little belligerent with me, they're like, why can't I see you in America more? And it's like, dude, it's not me. I'm not. I would love to.
You got to go where the work is.
Yeah, but it's like, look, if we're going and playing, 4,000 or 5,000 seat rooms in Europe and playing 400 or 500 seat rooms in America, that pretty much says it all. That there's a difference because it's the same songs, it's the same year, it's the same band. Jesus. So it just shows that there's just a market over there for what I'm doing that just isn't really quite tapped here, or maybe it's just gone here. It's not here anymore.
And I think
it's gone. Hopefully, just for the moment.
Yeah, right. Hopefully. I got to tell the story to him, Jeff. That way, the perspective, I guess, gets across. I saw Airborne at a club in Baltimore. There was not even 250 people there, and those guys play the Wacken Fest for 70,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like
it's all these bands. It's like I love Miles Kennedy. And like he'll go and do his solo thing in Amsterdam and sell out 5 nights.
Jesus.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Right, and then he'll do one night at like the House of Blues, in Orlando or something here. So it's just like it's the same guy. It's the same music. And yet it's just such a different thing. It's because I think our palette in America for music is just very different. I think Europe, there's just this history. Older music is just ingrained in their culture because our audiences in Europe will have like 17-year-old girls showing up at our concerts in Europe, and they're wearing like an Aerosmith T-shirt or a Guns N' Roses T-shirt. And you find out that, my dad bought me a guitar and I'm learning to play guitar. And like in America, when I play, the audience is like 40 and up.
Yeah.
So it just shows that like the kids are just not into guitar here in this country. They're just
Which is bad. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And, I think it has a lot to do with if you just look at the culture as a whole. Right? Like you go to Europe and there's a good chance you're going to see a building that's 3,000 years old. And that's not an exaggeration. That's the truth. Right? But you come to America and we're really quick to tear down historic buildings. I mean, there's certain areas where they won't, but they will. If you give somebody the opportunity, they will mow down a historic building in this country.
Even the oldest building in America is only a couple hundred years old compared to what they got over there. They got ancient history over in Europe.
Yeah.
We just have, semi-recent,
Yeah, I think that culture's kind of instilled in them, which means that, the music scene, even though they have very modern music, you have to go to Germany for it, but, they do have that techno stuff. But that old stuff is very entrenched. I mean, I think that probably, and because it is, it's so family first over there, with the way that they work and everything else. Maybe that's what, that's why Iron Maiden is still huge in Europe. You know, and they don't even play here hardly.
Well, there's two things that I've learned from my years of touring Europe that I always, whenever I get a chance to do an interview, I always say this because I just want people to hear this. Maybe it'll get out and maybe somebody will do something about this. There's two brilliant ideas that venues in Europe do that for some reason nobody in America has ever done, or at least lately. All the venues in like Western Europe, countries like, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, France, all that stuff. Every major city has like these venues with like a number. So like I'll give you an example. Like I'm playing a show in Amsterdam, and it's at a venue called the P3, and that venue is subsidized by the government. Like they have like an arts budget, and they say that we're going to keep this venue with like state-of-the-art lights, state-of-the-art sound.
Get out of town.
And there's a part of the federal budget reserved for the arts. So when you walk into a venue in Europe that's one of those numbered venues like that, you are guaranteed the finest sound, the finest lights. Everything is perfect.
Wow.
So that's one idea that, like I said, we have, in America, the arts is like, who cares? Nobody cares about the arts.
I mean, just with the description, you just answered your own question. It's federally funded. There's no federal money. There's no regional money. There's no state money. There's no local money.
There's no
arts.
There's no county money anywhere.
There's nothing.
The other thing that they do over there, I think, is also a brilliant idea of just a way to get people out to gigs is they just sell these venues I'm talking about with, the numbered venues. Yeah. They sell just like kind of like a season ticket, like the way we do for sports things here in America. They do like a season ticket. And it's for all the show, and it's not just all blues or all rock or all
it's
metal.
everything.
It's for all the gigs. So let's say like, you're Joe Schmo over in the Netherlands, and you say, I live down the street from P13. I'm just going to buy this pass, and whenever I feel like going to a gig of a band I've never heard of, I just walk over and check out the gig. And why are we not doing that here? It's so simple. Like, why are we not doing that? So those are just the things that I think would turn the music business around in this country if somebody were to,
I mean, it's lack of interest, and the lack of interest is due to the lack of funding to educate people and to help people get into it. And it's this vicious catch-22 that really just sucks.
And Jeff, this. We've had this conversation. People, for some reason, they think, oh, I can hear you or see you on YouTube, you are really making money playing music. So, and that whole Napster thing,
that's right. That was the beginning of it. Those were the guys responsible.
Oh, they should have hung that kid up by his feet and just used him like a piñata. I'm telling you, that was the downfall of the music business because he felt that he wasn't being treated correctly with the music that he had to pay for. That's the funny part. I think Levi's would have a problem if you just started running in the store and taking them off the shelf and just saying, hey, I don't want to pay for this.
Right. That because now the culture is, well, why should I have to pay for music? It's free. It's just out there.
Right.
So what it does to the artist is it's changed. Now artists are having to be more obnoxious with their merchandise, as just because as a reaction to well we got to pay the rent. It's kind of like you see, and I'm not gonna mention any names, but there's some big blues artists out there who probably over merchandise. They put their name on everything, and it kind of offends people. But it's like they're doing it because they're not selling records.
Yeah, guys got to pay the bills, man.
And they're like, well, if I'm not selling records, I might as well be selling beach towels or bobbleheads because I got to sell something.
Yeah,
right. That's true.
So that's the thing, and that's why I don't care how tired I am after a gig. I am right out at that merch table 5 minutes after the gig is over because that's your profit. That's your profit.
Yeah. And see, that is the part that sucks, though. See, it's your talent is not enough weight. You got to go out there and you got to kind of, you got to hustle yourself. And for some reason that has been, put into some category that people think that it's no big deal for you to just spend your own money, try to make a product that you hope that they like, and then they're just going to try to figure out a way that they take it from you.
It is very bizarre because
it's the only business, by the way, that happens.
That's right. Yeah, albums are basically the new business card, except it's a $10,000 business card. The most expensive business card in the world. So it becomes this thing where when because I proudly self-finance my record. I don't do GoFundMe. I don't take out loans. I don't borrow money from friends. I just do my records. And the reason why I do that is because then when the album's out, I'm not owing somebody, or I don't have people calling me, or banging on my door for money. So but it's one of those things that every 2 years when it's time to make a record, I know that it's just gonna be. You just have to take money out of your account and just make this business card because that's what you have to do. Now, that being said, I don't want to sound super negative. I mean, I love making records and making new music for my fans, and it's an amazing thing to make the music itself, the art itself. But financially, no, you take a huge hit when you self-finance a record. It's a major undertaking. And I do records every 2 years. So every 2 years, I need to just get that money together.
But you can see, though, Erik, that it can become very discouraging for artists if they're out there doing exactly what you're doing, and then every 2 years you go, I got to take another hit for 10 grand. I got to
plow a bunch of money back in. Yeah, right.
And they go, I could be an accountant making, $200K, and that's, see, you have this perpetual wheel that's been kind of going since you were 7, but there's a lot of guys that, they end up just burning out, and it's good that you're doing this. I mean, this, it's awesome. We take our hats off to you because you kick ass in more ways than one, but it's really sad that we have to have this conversation about something that is as awesome as music.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's like you said. You nailed it when you said, the wheel's been going since I was a kid. That's why I've never had to take some kind of day job or work or wait tables or 10 bar. It's because by the time I was 15, I was already, like most kids turn 15, they go get a job at McDonald's.
Yeah.
I was already like doing tours. So it was just because of, and I don't say that to sound like I'm better than anybody. I just mean like the timing of it was so far ahead of when most people get into the workforce. So now at 28, I'm like a veteran of this business, and I'm only 28, whereas a lot of guys just pick up a guitar at 28 and try to get started at 28.
Yeah. Right.
So that's why, my financial situation is a little different than the guys who start in their teens or 20s, because they're hustling now. Whereas luckily for me, I'm not where I want to be yet, of course, but I'm at the point where people know the name, and I do sell records, and I do make my money back on these projects and these albums, and and I do live in a nice area and all that stuff. But I can't imagine what it would have been like if I had the same abilities and talents but started at 18. I think I'd be working at Guitar Center, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nothing against that. I'm just saying that I wouldn't be doing this full time.
Well, we are fans of your playing, man, and the tones that you get out of those fire-breathing dragons is unbelievable. And we will, please stay in contact with us because if you're doing anything, we have no issues making sure we drop a note for everybody to check it out.
Great.
And,
for sure.
And we will make sure that your website is on this episode, and that will live in
perpetuity.
That's right.
Perfect. Yeah, we got the tour schedule is always updated on there, so it's always accurate.
And our European friends, man, they can check it out because we got a lot of fans over there too. So, you know, and
we need more American fans.
Yeah, we need Erik to play in his homeland.
Yeah,
I know. Before I go, I'm doing some stuff. I'm doing Atlanta, doing Florida, doing a couple things in the Midwest, but then back over to Europe for 3 months. September, October, November. I'll be living over there. Yeah. So
now, Erik, you are August 18th in Sarasota, Florida.
You know what? Let me check something on that right while I'm on the phone with you, because there was a situation. If you're talking about the show that was in Bradenton, are you talking about that one?
Oh, maybe it was Bradenton. I know it was.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, that show is going to have to be canceled because Aces, which was a great venue, I've worked at a bunch of times.
Yeah, it was Aces, yeah.
They closed, and they are trying to open up in a new location, but they don't have the lease yet. So, yeah, and it's a real bummer for me because a lot of folks are planning on coming to that gig. So I'm getting a lot of pissed off messages.
I'm thinking flatbed truck and parking lot.
I know. Unfortunately, this one's out of my hands, so I'm gonna have to take it off the website probably tonight. Because
you know what the biggest bummer is?
You'll be
my
there.
My wife and I are flying into Florida that day, and I was going to come up to see you.
Oh man! Well, you know what, man? I mean, we'll be around the area, so maybe we can hang out somewhere and then meet. But unfortunately, I don't think that gig is going to happen. And like I said, out of my control, unfortunately.
Yeah, I tell you what, you give me the word. I got a friend that works for Sunbelt Generators. He can have a truck down there. You get a flatbed, man. You could do it up right. You know what I'm saying?
What? The guys in my rhythm section, they love to play, man. They would probably do it. They'd probably do it just for fun.
What do you think, Jeff? You get a flatbed, you get a parking lot full of people. It's just it's just outside.
Sell beer.
Hell, man. There you go. If you can't do it there, bring it down to a little further south. I'll tell you where to bring it on the Gulf Coast. But the next night you're all the way on the East Coast
then we're at Earl's over in Bastion, and then we're doing a place called the Arts Garage, which is August 17th, which is the Friday. That's in Delray, and that'll be really cool. We've worked Delray before, but just on the blues circuit. This is a real deal venue. So.
Nice.
This will be cool.
Well, one thing that I wanted to say real quick, that a lot of people, if they haven't seen you or heard you or watched you on YouTube, definitely go out to YouTube because you can definitely get a lot of videos of Erik playing.
Yeah.
You have a very diverse palette with your playing. I've seen you do stuff where it's like that is metal to no end. All the way to the most soulful, bluesiest thing, real fast. I mean, it's so crazy your dynamics that you have.
That's what we're all about, man. It's all about. I want to take people on a roller coaster ride in the gig, and the thing I hate most is when I go to see a band and it's all the same all night, one dynamic level. I can't stand that. So of course, on my own gigs, I work very hard to make sure it isn't like that. And it comes back to what we said earlier. It's all about that volume knob. I'm always, working that.
I like
and that's what gets you from that just full on metal insanity to like that just Muddy Waters tone almost. Just clean and bluesy. And then it's the same song even sometimes.
Yeah, well,
nice.
Yeah, you can't. What else do you say to that? I mean, that right there is a lot of hats to wear, and
it's what? It's a knob. It's not a switch.
Exactly.
It's a knob. It has different positions, and it sounds different. Use it.
Yeah, man.
Great, man. Erik, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck on your tour. Safe travels to Europe. And let us know when something new is brewing, and I'm sure we'll get it out there for sure.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll definitely just drop you a note every now and then just to see how things are going. That way,
please do. Yeah,
because schedules get busy, I know, and now that we definitely have to have you back on, man.
Good. I would love that. Yeah, things are really at the moment. Things are really taking off with the whole Nags thing.
Good.
It's really getting going. So it's cool.
Awesome,
nice.
Man.
Very good, Erik. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Safe travels, my friend, and much continued success.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, take care, man. And there you have the story.
Dude, I'm a huge fan of that cat.
Yeah, another player that just started so early,
That blows my mind.
Continued on with it. Well, luckily he had something at least as good as a Squier Strat to start on, which, that I have one of those as a shop guitar that I kick around. It's one of my shop guitars, know, and it's like there ain't nothing wrong with them.
No.
But I mean, to come from a non-musical family, but somebody that's a family that loved music, and then okay, you want to play, we'll support you. And it just kept going from there. That was really cool, man. That was really cool.
And look, I know that some of our audience is probably going to think we're just a bunch of old guys complaining, but it's a real problem here in America with how much the arts and it's not just music. I'm saying the arts are being just annihilated, like
disrespected,
just being
completely disrespected
and eliminated.
Yeah,
I mean, it is our endangered species of things that are going on in schools. And look, I understand the sports programs and I understand all the other academics piece, but that other thing is creative minds.
It's vital. Don't
always make cars and skyscrapers. You know, music is a very essential part of life. Everybody listening to this knows this, and it's very important. So if you guys if you're out there and you have any kind of say in your neighborhood or anything like that, or you got kids in schools, it really needs to kind of be brought up, because man, they just take it away. They have no problem. That's like the first thing on the chopping block these days that gets eliminated.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's very sad, man.
It is.
And guys like Erik, thank God, that he's still trying to carry that torch and doing it very well, mind you.
Yes.
But look, you don't all have to be at Erik's level either. There's a ton of room in this business. And, Erik's an exception. I mean, he's like Doug, Doug Rappaport. There's always going to be those guys that are the exception to the rule, but there's plenty of room out there for the other guys. So it's like you never want to discourage anybody, because you got to take a swing.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't even have to have that as a life goal or an aspiration.
Hell no.
Just, for people just to learn music and to get involved with it. I mean, it's, if you can get to the point where you can have a couple people that have acoustic guitars and sitting around with a bunch of friends just having fun, and put the communication device down for an hour or two.
Hell, it's therapy, man.
It's therapy. It's good for the mind. It's good for the soul. It truly is good for the mind. I mean, literally.
Oh,
but the interaction is something that is terribly missing, and this is one of those things that can bring that back.
Oh,
the person-to-person interaction is hugely important in a society for creatures.
And look, you may not go any further, or than your bedroom, or you could be in a local band, and 100%. It doesn't mean that you don't have success. We need those scenes to kind of carry on. See, if you look at it in like some kind of crazy trickle down thing. If the music programs are thriving in schools, then you're going to have people buying instruments. And when they buy the instruments, then the companies can then, it's this whole, I think it's how the world works, right? You get your license at 16, you got to buy a car, it's one of those things. It's the same deal. And it's not. I just don't look at it as a dismissive thing. Like, oh, don't worry about that. It's like, yeah, worry about that, because if it goes away, what the hell do we have?
Yeah, I mean, you're also, you're not only taking out the brain function and that degree of education from the schools, but you're also seriously hurting many American industries. And companies. So it really. It has that kind of trickle down, and we don't need to keep going any further into it. But there's one thing and I'll say this and we'll get off it.
Yes.
You mentioned you don't really have to have success. Well, you know what? Having fun is also a type of success.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to be massive riches.
No. Could be that kid on the porch in Deliverance beating that other guy dueling banjos.
Right. I mean, fun and enjoyment is a form of success. I think we all too often forget that.
Yeah.
It is also a form of success.
I think.
And it's one that is very much needed.
You got to pull yourself out of the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter world and understand that life is not a beer commercial, and everybody's not happy. Life comes in 5-second doses, kids, and that's just the way it is. But the success of learning a song is if you haven't done it, it's pretty damn cool when you can pull it off. You know?
Yeah.
I look at it that way. When I figure out something that I haven't been able to, I haven't done or never even attempted, and then I figure it out on my own, I'm like, man, that's pretty badass. I may never play it out in front of people, but to figure it out is kind of cool.
Absolutely,
it's
right.
a little journey, little
called
conquer.
an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, little goals, man. That's all life is. It's just little tiny goals added up to the big ones.
A lot of them strung together. Exactly.
So until next, what? You got more?
No, I was just going to say, life might not be a beer commercial, but I think it's time for one. So.
See, that was worth me not saying it that time. So until next time, my friend.
When I'll be done with my beer.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
That's right. And I'm Jeff Bober.
And we are always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @Amps and Axes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.